contemporary music only. And he came to the section of David's score, and he said, what do I hear? What do I do here, David? And David said, it's a cadenza. You improvise. And he said, well, but what do you want me to do? And Bedford said, it's a cadenza. And he said, you're paid to write the music, I'm paid to play it. That was his attitude. And this is a common attitude amongst musicians. Musicians who are supposed to be in touch with the roots of music weren't in touch anymore. They were simply factory hands, because the orchestra is like a factory. You have the score, which is the belt, you know, and you have the conductor, who's your line manager, and you just follow instructions. So this was the situation even in the 60s. And what recording does, one of the important things it does, is to put the control of musical origination back into the hands of performers. Because if it's nothing else, recording is a compositional tool for performance, because you can compose with your performances in that medium. But I come to that. Anyway, so I've established these three things, I think. So the age of recording begins in 1877, but it doesn't really kick in until probably the 1940s and 50s, because the technology was so crude. Electrification came in the middle of the 20s, things got a bit better, but you're really waiting for people like Les Paul to invent multi-track, even if it's only 4 tracks. You're really this is what it's waiting for. So the Beatles fit precisely, so this is how late things happen. Beatles' first albums were made on stereo like everybody else's. They went into the studio, everything was mic'd up, it's all mixed down in real time onto stereo, full stop. Whole album, whole first album, 12 hours out of there, finished. So by the time you come to Sergeant Pepper, which is what, 3 years later, they've got a 4-track machine. They've got 4 whole tracks. They take about 8 months to make their album, because they're messing about with everything because they've figured out how to do it. So back to me. Okay, I'll be a little theoretical digression, or rather putting things in their place digression. So here I am. It's 19. What is it? It's 1969, 1970 or so. I didn't really want to play the drums, but because I played the guitar in the beginning and the banjo, and I was in a skiffle group, but everybody else played much better than me, and I wanted to be in a band, and there were lots of guitarists, and lots of guitarists who were ready to play the bass guitar. So drums was about the only thing left, and I thought, well, that doesn't look that difficult to me, you know, I can do that. So, and then I went through the whole thing, playing instrumental music, playing rhythm and blues, being in a soul band, being in a free jazz band. So I learned my trade. And in those days, if you were in a band, you didn't do your stuff, and you didn't have people sitting and watching. You were supposed to play for people to dance. And people would come up to you and say, play this, play that, can you play this? Or some new hit. You had to know all the stuff. You had to really, so it was a great university to be in such a band, because you just had to learn everything, all the different styles. And people would say, come and play Knees Up Mother Brown, which is an old English pub song, and then they'd want, you know, some hit by Elvis Presley, and you had to play it all. So it was a good education to have. And by the middle of the 60s, I got fairly competent. And I'd realised that actually the drums was quite an interesting instrument, and there were a lot of things that you could do with them hadn't actually been done. So I felt that I could stick with it. You know, I wasn't going to, but I thought I'd stick with it. And then I joined a group called Henry Cow in the beginning of about 73, 72 actually. And this was exactly the time we were on this experimental trajectory where it was actually acceptable, more or less, to the listening public, to present them with things that they didn't already know. It's very difficult now, but there was a short period between about 66 and 72 where people were actually interested in new things and experimental things. Henry Cow was such a fan. And we, it was a strange mixture of people. We all came from completely different backgrounds. I mean, I was an autodidact, came from a rock background. The guitarist basically came from folk background, Fred Frith. The keyboard player and saxophonist came from jazz background. And the bass player had worked with his father in a Welsh band playing stuff for dance. So we were, but at the same time we were all voracious listeners, because when you learn by listening and copying from records, one record is exactly the same as every other record. When you go into the record shop, there's just a lot of identical black plastic discs with stuff on them, and you start off copying the easy stuff. But when you start listening to, as we did, so you're listening to black American free jazz, and we thought that's interesting. We can do a bit of that. We can take some of these ideas. When you're listening to Messiaen, Varese, Schoenberg, Cage. Who was Lindsay's favourite? Janacek. So everybody was. You just take ideas that you hear that you like and you put them in. Take them from folk music, take them from jazz, take them from music from the pygmies of the Upper Amazon. If there's something you think you can steal it, jam it all together with this new instruments that you've got. That was essentially the attitude of the people in that band. And we worked on 3 levels, I would say. The standard rock band method. Somebody comes with some stuff and you kind of work on it until it sounds good. The every note is written score method. We had stuff that was completely scored. Although we had a rule that the composer didn't own the piece. In other words, if we didn't like bits of it, we could cut them out or we could change them. So, and we improvised. I mean, completely free improvised based on the kind of English European school of improvisation, not the American school, which was unusual for a rock band at that time, in fact. And so I'll give you the context, because I've been talking for far too long already. I'll just play something.
I have to open. Wait a minute.
From of the composed material. So this is where we start from.
Some time to get. I think we'll work on that. Okay. Always the same. Okay, so we have the first list here.
Okay, great. Here we go. Okay, this is. I'll just play a couple of minutes of it.
1 second for stickers wake up, but it should work. It should work.
Should it be playing?
No, it's not yet.
I can play it for you. So we're in the 70s here.
What is the year?
How do I stop it?
By tab,
Hmm?
by spacebar.
Ah. So it was a classic situation. We were a band. We'd been playing for a couple of years. We had material, enough material to make an album. We made an album. Of course, we're signed with Virgin Records. They want another album really fast. We don't have the material. We've just lost our saxophone player and replaced him with a bassoonist. So we have hardly any material written for bassoon. But during the making of the first album, because we were very lucky to have a good engineer, mostly still at this time, the band was supposed to stay in the studio and document their stuff, and the people in the control room recorded the stuff. We were in the fortunate position that we were basically taught by the engineer how to use the console and how to use the studio. So for the second album we thought, well, studio looks like a really useful composing instrument. So we don't have enough material to do an album, doesn't really matter. We'll just go in there and we'll make the stuff up on the spot in the studio. And there are two main processes. That first of all, we improvised a lot, and then listened to stuff, and then reduced it. So I'll play a reduction. This is a reduction piece. If it works. Oh, so what do you need to do here to make this work?
I can see that.
To the topic a bit. Yeah, the point is to create order. You know, this is the thing, and this actually has to come from human intelligence. Order doesn't work. Mostly, order doesn't create itself in these sorts of situations. Now, this method was basically about reducing the material as far as possible, of taking things away. And the next piece is a different. We used different procedures for every piece, but the next piece was more additive. So we took, I think, 45 seconds from something that we'd done, which is just bass and drums, and we made a huge loop from it, which on the 2-inch tape loop, which went all around the studio. And then progressively added things to it. And then when that got too boring, we found some other material from another piece that we'd already written, which we played backwards at half speed and ran across. You couldn't do this except with tape, because the thing is, when you've got 2-inch tape and 45-inch loop, there's so much friction. Whatever you use, you know, we were using bottles and cups.
So how long was a loop?
Well,
in time?
15 inches a second.
Okay.
15 times 45.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
it's long,
Long.
really long. So it's basically it's speeding up and slowing down all the time because of the friction.
Mhm.
And this is a quality of sound that you can't get digitally. You can't simulate
Mhm.
it. And the same with the sound of when this backward band comes in. You can't do that. You have to use tape. I mean, I miss tape, I have to say. There were so many beautiful things you could do with tape. For instance, even on written music, you want a part to sound a bit more bright. You step the tape down 3 or 4 cents. You retune the guitar or whatever instrument it is. When you play it back, it's just a little bit brighter. And the same with stepping things down. You can't pitch shift that way. It doesn't sound the same. So this is also a tribute to tape, I have to say, this piece. It's quite long. I'm running out of time. So, but I would like to play at least until we get to the transition. Why am I not good at that? I know why. Because I always...
Yeah, that's where you said single tape. Achtung.
it goes on longer and then it comes to a big climax. What's next? And also, so this is partially using performances, like this loop was a live performance, and partially using found materials. As it was actually just another piece of ours on the same record at half speed. But also, we use the studio as a way of also in the context of generating form. So we all had headphones on, and I counted at different points on the tape. I simply counted different tempi, and it's with a simple rule that when you hear the count, you stop, you change tempo. If you've already stopped from before, you come in. It's a very, very minimal set of instructions, but it produces interesting results, I have to say. So this is based only on that. This is just everybody's got, and they've all got the same count in their headphones. So, but they're stopping and starting. Oh,
1.
okay. Two things. First of all, I was wrong. The instruction is stop at the end of the count, ignore the count and carry on doing exactly what you were doing before, or if you stopped, start. So that's all. And this is standard rock group instrumentation here. There's nothing strange about it, and played in real time. So again, it's a fascinating way to make form, because you hear that there's a form there. You can't tell what it is, but you hear it. We did a lot of this stuff, Henry Cow. After Henry Cow, three of the band went on to form a band called the Art Bears, which was a song group. And we started from the premise that we were only going to use the studio to compose everything, and that we wouldn't, nothing would be rehearsed. We wouldn't play anything really in a studio. We would go in and build everything up. So we would go in, put in a click track, I wrote all the text, which I gave to Fred. Fred set melody lines for the text. We'd go in, put a click track, put the melody line on first. Dagmar would go upstairs, the singer, and learn the melody to sing along. And we would then build up the track one thing at a time by saying, I think we have this, and then Fred would say, how about this, and how about that. And there were a few harmonic things which had to go in, but basically, and so it's a very clean way to work. You get a great sound because there's nothing spilling from anywhere, every sound is completely clean. And you can design each sound as you go.
Chris,
So
just one remark, because I think that for you it's evident when you say fret, but the others, I think they know that we are talking about fret frit.
yeah, it's a good
Because that's also the.
band's name.
Do you know that we are talking about fret frit, which is just a very important partner of Chris Cutler activity.
What was that? Yeah, so, and because of our experience in Henry Cow, which was a highly democratic organisation, where we had a rule that only unanimous decisions were acceptable, no majority decisions. So we were constantly arguing and discussing about everything. So the Art Bears had a rule, no discussion, no argument. Somebody says, I think we should do this, go in, put it on the tape. Then we decide if it works or not. But no discussion. And so this was made this way, and it would work that I or Fred would say, and it was basically just the two of us. It was just the two of us. Basically, I or Fred would say, I want this to sound. We used visual language the whole time. We'd say, I want this to sound like, should sound like leaves falling from trees, or it should sound like running water, or this needs to be like a Geiger counter. So, and we had a great engineer, and we would fiddle about with stuff until we got the sounds we wanted, and then put them straight to the tape. So there was none of this, put it down, which was a standard procedure at this time, was you record everything flat, and then post-production you change the sound, you do your manipulations. It's exactly the opposite for us. We put onto tape the sounds that we wanted, and we didn't change them afterwards. We just mixed it at the end. What should I play? Because we're running short of time, very short, I'll just play The Dignity of Labour.
By the way, we have two groups of people. The ones are students which have classes perhaps exactly at 1 o'clock, but the others are perhaps more free, including me.
Okay, well, it can overrun it, but still.
Proszę?
Mamy
No nie, ale powiedziałem właśnie, że o pierwszej godzinie część osób wyjdzie, a część zostanie. Tylko tyle. Bez żadnych tych.
Still, I'll skip. I talked too long at the beginning. So, okay, this is a song where you can hear immediately why this could only be done in a studio.
All our lives, all of us whose bones you have claimed on, were all our lives wasted, were we martyred to finish with all forms of slavery forever? Only to witness our offspring complacent and bought off with scraps, to see workmen and women divided. As we look about us, things seem worse than ever. As we look about us, things seem worse than ever. As we look about us, things seem worse than ever. As we look about us, things seem worse than ever.
mean, I'd like to play it all, but so you can see this is essentially built on almost nothing. It's just a melody line with a few piano chords and backwards drums on top of forward drums. That's the trick. Is that you have a forward drum and a backward drum, so everything is like a mirror, and that's all you need. You don't, you know. And you couldn't write a song like that, and you couldn't rehearse a song like that, and you can't perform a song like that. But you can do it in the studio. Yeah. I would play you a couple of other songs, and you can always go and find Art Bear's albums. They're all like this all the way through. I mean, lots of recording studios. So this is what we are. We're in 1979. We're still in the 70s here. So after this, the next major project I did was a German group called Placebo with Heiner Goebbels, who you might have heard of because he's famous now, and two other people. And this concept was, how do we come to form? We thought we can come to form by improvising, but not improvising in inverted commas, because improvising, like everything, if you listen to Cage pieces, people play them now like it was the 60s. It sounds like it sounded in the 60s. The score doesn't tell you to do that. Mostly Cage's scores just say, you know, at 4 minutes and 28 seconds, make one of your 12 sounds. At 5 minutes, it doesn't say what, but people make the same kind of sounds as they did because somehow that's what modern music is supposed to sound like. You know. And improvisation was supposed to sound a certain way too. It's not supposed to have any, it's like Darmstadt rules. No melody, no harmony, no consistent rhythm. If you start to play a beat, you know, you're in trouble because they're absolutely breaking the rules. Whereas, you know, the New York bomber Metzger said, freedom means you don't have to obey. So the Kasiba idea was, we're going to improvise, but it's going to sound like a composition. So that's our mindset, is that it provides things that sound composed. And we did a lot of song-ish material in this way, and it really does sound like songs with arrangements. But not what I want to play. I want to play something that's slightly more interesting, because we met to do this project, and we did it in a studio, but we didn't mess about with the studio. We didn't use the studio except to document what we did. And it was going to be a recording project, but we were invited to play at the Frankfurt Jazz Festival, and we thought, okay, well, why not? We can do this stuff live. And we made half of the stuff at the Jazz Festival. We made half of the stuff up, like we had on the record. But the other half, we tried to remember what we'd done on the record and do it again. And more gigs followed, and we became a band, which wasn't the intention. And some pieces, and in a kind of quite organic way, pieces started to emerge from just the fact that we would run with the same ideas 5 or 6 concerts in a row, and if we liked them, they would emerge again at the next concert until they came to some sort of shape. The piece I'm going to play you, again it's quite long, it is exactly such a piece, which came to the shape that it came to without anybody ever saying anything to anybody else, and without any kind of discussion. But if you listen to it, in the end, it's a bit like an electroacoustic piece, although again it was performed. But it definitely has a content, and it has subject matter, as you'll hear. I mean, the extracts that you'll recognise probably is from Schoenberg's Survivor from Warsaw, and that gives you the key to the whole piece, I would say. It was called In einer Minute, which is what it's from, and Brahms, of course. Oh, I should say, can I do that? Yes, I can. I should say, one of the interesting things about Kasiba was that our guitar player, Christoph Anders, who also played the saxophone, had invented for himself an instrument which was essentially a table full of cassettes. and he just played these cassettes, and he somehow knew what they all were and where everything was, and he could drop the stuff in this most extraordinary way, like it's like a sampler. Basically, it was like a sampler, only instead of pressing a key to get the sample, you had to put the cassette in. So, because a lot of the material that you'll hear is from this, for instance. It's the cassette running through a Korg synthesizer. And the song, as you know, is that I shall never again see the land I was born in. It's that Heinz Eisler song. Okay, I'll skip that as well. But yes, Kasiba. This was a. It was interesting. In the course of its career, it moved from producing form in this way to producing form in a actual composed. And then we started. So we made the opposite movement from non-composition to more form. Skip.
Kasiber? No Kasiber? There's a beautiful album with Zygmunt Krause also, another project. P73? No, P53. Yeah. Cycling 74, P53.
I can mention that. I can't play anything, I haven't got anything.
Okay.
But P53 is an example of composition by selection of personnel. P53 was put together. I just very carefully chose the people to do it, and I gave them particular instructions, which were essentially to think channel hopping, to not play the same thing with other people, to try and play parallel. I had two pianists, one who only played selections from the classical repertoire, but at the wrong speed, again like a sampler. And Zygmunt, who was allowed to do anything he wanted.
Zygmunt Krause.
And a guy called Otomo Yoshihide, who's a great Japanese turntable player. And Lutz Glandin, who's a East German composer who played kind of guitar. But it was a very interesting piece. But it was a long form piece that only worked long form, and it was very much to do with everything running parallel. So you couldn't follow the information in a clear way. And in fact, when I made a record of it, because it was done again, it was done for the Frankfurt Jazz Festival again. I divided it arbitrarily into sections and encouraged people to play it on shuffle because it just works. Because nothing's following anything else anyway. So yeah. Okay, these are normal. Leave it. Bad boys. Yeah.
Do you have a Kasiber here with you?
Mention.
Just as a short example. Well, we can check it.
Okay.
It's available.
I'll skip all of this because we haven't got long. I'll jump to. I would like to say something about creating form when you're working with scores. Easy. When you're working with other people, also easy because there's some agon. There's some tension between. Decisions are easier to make when you have something to work against. The most difficult thing, and the thing which I avoided doing for decades, is to play solo, to play alone, because then you've basically got nothing to work off except the instrument. And personally, I have to say, I find drums mostly quite boring. I'm not that fond of drums. I mean, I quite like it when they do something interesting, but as an instrument to improvise on, it doesn't interest me much at all, I have to say. But from the early 70s in Henry Cow, because these were the days of experimentation. So Fred had an electric guitar, and everybody else thought, yeah, with the electrification thing, you get a lot of interesting sounds out of that. So the saxophonist electrified the saxophone and ran it through pedals. The bassoonist electrified the bassoon, ran it through pedals. And I thought, yeah, well, to electrify the drums and run them through pedals, which is, as you actually see, is what I do. And also in Kasiba, when you can hear a lot of those drum sounds, well, that's because they're running through this stuff. And it came to a point where I thought, okay, well, it actually was Fred. Fred had been doing solo gigs since he was 4 years old. Encouraged me to do solo gigs. eventually do. And as with all improvising, I have to say, I have never made an improvising album in a studio, and I wouldn't, I don't think. It doesn't make any sense. There's nobody there. Improvising only makes sense when A, you can't go back and do something again. Everything is real and written in stone. And B, there's a bunch of people sitting in front of you who you have to entertain. Because this creates a certain kind of tension that then produces, it focuses the mind. And also, an audience makes structure not only by listening, but also, musicians will tell you this, but it's hard to explain it. You feel the room, and you feel what you need to do next in order for something to make any kind of sense. And the electrification gave me essentially things which I don't have, like sustained notes. You can't do that on drums. Cymbal is as close as you get, and that's not a sustain, it's always a diminuendo. And pitch is a jolly good thing to have, which you don't really have. So the way I play 2 short extracts from solo concerts, and they're all live concerts, because improvising in studios is good for producing material which you can then work with and manipulate in the studio, because that's what studios are for. Improvising in a studio, a lot of people do it, but I just can't get my head around it. It doesn't make sense to me. So I'll play a couple of snatches from. This is gigs from about 15 years ago, I think now. Okay, well we don't have that. Let's call something else. Drum kit.
You have the recording from the last concert by Chris on Saturday as a part of the conference. It's on the website of the studio. Both video recording and the audio recording. You can get it this instrument without those, but mainly this part is available there. With some beautiful noises from one unit.
Idea. So, and there's no samples. You know, this is really very crude. You see it. These are guitar pedals. These are very crude, old, no longer in existence. None of my pedals exist anymore. They've all been long made obsolete and replaced by clever digital pedals, which do clever things but don't do dirty, unpredictable things in the same way that the old pedals did. Okay. Couple of minutes. Good. Okay. Skip. Finally, then, form. So, traditional electroacoustic methodology applied to plunderphonics. Plunderphonics was the term was invented and defined by John Oswald, a Canadian saxophonist, actually, who decided that in a kind of postmodern way that everything had been done, so you could just reposition all the wreckage and make new things out of what was already there. So he would take either an artist's recorded repertoire or a particular record and then submit it to various procedures that turned it into something else, creating copyright havoc. The first CD that he made was forced into withdrawal by the Copyright Association and destroyed because of the but it's a brilliant record. You can get it again now. He's put it out under a different name and hasn't been shut down. So. But it is an extraordinary catalogue of procedures that you can. And his explanation for it was, he said, I want people to hear this music the way I hear it. So he doesn't hear it the way normal people hear it. He sees it a different way. So I was asked to contribute to a whole record of polyphonic pieces. So I decided that I would just plunder myself. There wouldn't be any problems with that, any copyright problems. So I went back to those Art Bears records, because there were 3 of them, and I took off some of the drum parts, just the drum parts, and from these parts I put together another piece, a new piece. So there's no origination anymore. There's only form and structure, but no origination. The origination had already happened long ago and was out of my control. The only bits that you hear that were actually recorded for the piece are me walking from one room to the next. And I'll play that and we'll be pretty much done.
Who and where?
Okay, there you go.
Who and where was walking?
Who and where? That. This is recorded about 15 years ago in the studio in France where I always record, using material from the Art Bears multi-tracks. And the up and down the stairs recording and going out in the yard, in the building.
Okay, yeah. Just a question.
Yeah.
Like, because sometimes we have something really special and something
No.
coincidental, accidental.
So that's it, you know, just about 10 minutes later.
Mogłeś mi powiedzieć, ja bym się podał przez środek.
I can send you all away with something else if you want.
Użyć
Or you can
drona.
ask me questions. if
I
you
have
any.
a question. Where is it possible to find new music?
Huh?
Where is it possible to find new music? Anywhere?
Yeah.
The
I mean, you
internet?
can find it on Amazon. You can find everything on YouTube. But everything's stolen and put up on YouTube for nothing. So really easy.
Yeah,
to
but
find.
it's not a fair way to treat
Ah,
artists.
well,
I can tell you how to do it.
yeah.
Sorry.
I have a record label on the record, so you can get it. But yes, it's all easy to get. Yeah.
But with your name or the name of your projects in the 70s? like
Well,
Henry
they're all
Cow?
under the different, you know, Casiba's under Casiba, Henry Cow under Henry Cow, Art Bears under Art Bears. The solo album is under my name,
Okay.
and some soundscape stuff that I did is under my name, but it's different. But you can go to my website and everything will be clear.
Okay.
I have a website,
Perfect.
ccutler.com.
So simple. Okay.
To be clear, it's printed there.
Excuse
Stupid
me.
jokes.
May I?
Yeah.
I personally don't agree with you when you have said that educated musicians are like computer who read the text, the black notes, and they are doing just this. In my personal point of
Experience?
view,
Uh-huh.
I think that behind this text there is some part left to the will, the free will of the performer.
Well, I'm sure you're right. Yeah, there's always the aspect of interpretation, which good performers do, and you know, and good performers are also caught up in the general gestalt, so that people don't control themselves; they're controlled by other people to a certain extent. The point I really wanted to make was that many classically trained musicians in the 1960s into the 70s, not true anymore, were unable to improvise. They just couldn't do it.
One
They
of the
weren't
basic
taught
problem.
how to do it, and they were rigorously taught because the profession they were going into demanded precision. Conductors want everything to be right. Composers want everything to be right, and compositions are getting more and more complicated throughout the first half of the 20th century. So it was a hard job being a musician, and being asked to improvise was just too much. They weren't interested in it. But this generation now, I mean, half of the improvising musicians I know are classically trained. So it's all changed now.
That's why, for example, now in Poland, in this academy, there are lessons of improvisations for classic musicians.
Yeah.
So maybe is this the gap which now has been covered?
Well,
There's a group lab
Yeah.
going on every Wednesday here.
Okay.
This is just the
Yeah,
reason
yeah, I
open
I think
2012
in
fact,
general,
before you came.
the genres are closing up. I mean, the fringe of contemporary music,
What
and
you
the
read?
fringe of
Oh.
experimental rock, and the fringe of jazz, they're the same. I could play you pieces that you wouldn't know what genre it was. You know,
This is what I'm doing in my classes: listen and improvise and compose music, and to ask, can you recognize? And with the spectacular cases you count.
yeah,
So this is a beautiful proof,
yeah.
also, and test on
Because
that.
we're all concerned with similar problems, and we're all listening to each other.
Uh-huh.
I mean, and that started even in the 60s. I mean, all of those black free jazz guys in the 60s were all listening to contemporary music, all listening to Terry Riley, Cage. You know, they were interested in what was going on, and they were taking ideas, which you can also hear that they were taking ideas. Same with rock music. In rock music, you can hear, listen to the Soft Machine. You know, you can hear Cecil Taylor, and you can hear Terry Riley, and you can hear it, and you can hear what's his name? What's his name now?
Lamonté.
The famous trumpet player who
Uh-huh.
who basically introduced 11/8, 7/8, 9, all these Indian
Mhm.
rhythms were
Mhm.
introduced in by.
Mhm.
I mean, everybody talks about take 5. Dave Brubeck was take 5 was in
Mhm.
5/4,
Mhm.
but really it was his name I've forgotten. It'll come to me in a minute. A trumpet player who studied with Indian tabla players.
Ornette
all
Coleman?
these rhythms.
Oh.
So
No,
everybody
he's
was
a saxophone
stealing
player.
from everybody, and now,
Uh-huh.
you know, on the fringes, you really, and I'm in hundreds of ensembles where half of them come from jazz, half of them are classically
Mhm.
trained, and half of them are like me,
Mhm.
you know, autodidacts. So, and everybody gets on fine because essentially you're dealing with a similar language now.
Our idea is to be open and to have this open capability and to
Yeah.
so the way we are trained on the beginning, like playing what you are listening, what you hear, it's also the missing part of the music education. That's why we are creating the people which are excellent in note following strategy. And I don't know whether this is correct, but sometimes I make a very strong proof that we have a brilliant improvised music and very bad notated music, which also makes a message. Just to understand that this is not the point, in fact, what method you are using. Yeah, this is quite
Yeah.
clear. Or what instrument you are using. There are bad orchestral pieces and beautiful flute, solo flute pieces. So that's no the point, I think. Because sometimes we can make these hierarchies, especially in academic environment. We are starting from solo to the orchestra, going for this, and the improvised music is always in trouble. Oh, the jazz, it's okay. But we have here a little bit different because Jan Piel, Professor Jan Piel, who is running the percussion department, he's also in charge of contemporary music practices. So he's also excellent. So there are different groups, and we are dealing with this to make this pre-impro, non-jazz, non-rhythm based, non-scale based improvisation. And it's beautiful also. I don't know whether you agree with me, but you know, there's one instrument in the academy which is organ, which has also Baroque improvisation. I went through this. It was like a one module, quite strange. You go to improvise Passacaglia, and then you go to the church, of course, with this ability, but not other instruments. So
Yeah.
this instrument is gifted, you know. There's a block.
Organ improvisation goes right through to nearly the end of the 19th century.
Uh-huh.
Was a recognised form.
Mhm.
When everybody else, you know, all the cadenzas had been written out. For
Well,
years.
Charles Ives with his
Yes.
father, you know, that was improvising with the storm and rains and lightings. Yes.
And I have a question about maybe inspirations from the Karl-Heinz Stockhausen's music. Because sometimes your music is similar to Stockhausen. Electronic music and improvising music. Like in the 60s, he used to make the intuitive music.
Yeah.
And you didn't say about influences of is there any
Yes, I mean,
connections?
I had to hurry up, but yes, no, I would have spoken about that. Yes, I mean, I've played Alston and Stephen Targa. I've played some of those intuitive pieces of Stockhausen, and also the fact that Stockhausen was one of the few composers who stayed with electronics, also as an artist. He stayed with electronics his entire life. You know, a lot of them experimented a bit in the 60s and then went away. Stockhausen stayed with it. So, and I listened to an awful lot of Stockhausen. I still do. Important composer. But in general, yes, where rock groups have certain ways of putting structure. I mean, I've been in lots of contemporary ensembles where you use graphic scores, for instance, and game pieces, you know, instruction scores. And I've also written these sorts of things where, you know, you give people instructions and precise timings, and or you make them turn over cards, and so this way of creating form is because contemporary ensembles generally don't like to just do this. They like to have something to hold on to, and so there are all sorts of mechanisms for doing that. Good. Well, there you are.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So there are no students anymore. Well, you are. I will find something on the next Friday. I think I will not cancel the lecture, but there will be somebody.
Okay.
Just to you to know.
Perfect.
I'll play you out with a little bar.
Cześć Marku, dzięki.
Cześć, dzięki. Cześć. Chris?
Just a side note.
This is a prosthesis. So it was broken here, so I put some extra wire. You know, scratch it. This. Here's the point. Here's what she was the brake. So when you move the plug, it gets contact. That's how. Not in the socket. Inside. Just to know, because we don't know how long it will take, so it's good to know.
Yeah.
And there's a place, you know. The socket inside is correct.
Great.
So I had another one, but then I found this best fit the chassis, and we don't need to change anything. That's why I keep it like this. And I didn't visit. I'm sure that you can get similar in Radio Shack now. And it's similar as a shape and length, and that's it. And perhaps you don't need this. If you get it right, left, ground. 3 cables. This is left, ground is here, this is right. So you can go directly to any other components like this.
Great.
Oh, that was really great.
Here's the thing I'm in the middle of working on now. I have it by chance here. This is 9 against 5 against 4.
Uh-huh. Those organs.
I play this.
Oh. As I told you, I played PDR Weltmeister with wow effect. Coś mi się nie zgadzają śrubki teraz.
Krótkie są pewnie z
Nie, jedne mają gwint, a drugie są stożkowe, tak jak te.
Okej.
Chyba dobrze, teraz już dobrze. Music from another planet.
It's interesting with the rhythm because it's absolutely unstable, but it somehow is flat. I mean,
Do you
it
know-
really are. Everybody's playing different meters, but
Do you
it
know
sounds
Ars Nova ensemble from Malmö? Stefan Ostersjö, the guitar player. Because they deal with so weird repertoire. I played with them. It's so different from anything I know before.
Oh.
There are like several people just stuck with this style. You can type it. You can check it. I was. They were inspired by the 19th century painting. They choose one element and then they prepare the text and they ask me to read it in Polish during the performance there. So I was like an actor.
What's his
speaking.
name?
Stefan Ostersjö with umlaut Ostersjö. Ostersjö. T-R-S J O.
Ostersjö. Okay.
Ars Nova Ensemble. That's the name of the group. They work very much with Copenhagen because Malmö is very close
yes,
to.
it's just over the bridge. Isn't it, Malmö?
So yes. We've been working inside Integra project with Birmingham Conservatoire, building up the new open project called Integra Life, working with McGill University, with different institutions, and in fact we built up the free application called Integra. The starting point was to make all those pieces for instrument and electronics, especially from the older era, including IRCAM repertoire, to be available.
Ah.
So that was the idea. We start from migration, to migrate all those not available system to one system, free system, which is Integra. and partly we did it. It was a little bit utopic, in fact, but
yeah, it sounds a bit.
But as an approach, it was quite nice. And then finally, we have the software we've been using sometimes. It's like a Albeton Live a little bit.
Yeah.
So the same priority with the the same priority with the vertical and horizontal orientation. That was the idea. So when we'll be ready, then you should check it.
Yeah. Okay, yes. Never good at timing.
Teraz już widzę, na czym polega różnica. Tu jest plastik. Te stożkowe śruby wchodzą do plastiku. I już są 4. Wszystko się zgadza w tym momencie.
Teraz lecisz na...
Wiesz co, ale właśnie mam czas, bo tylko muszę płyty odebrać jeszcze, bo wydrukowałem 50 płyt. Okładki są już od wczoraj. Nie miałem tylko nie miałem kiedy odebrać, ale powiedziałem mi, że 15 po 2 będę najpóźniej po okładki. Ja jutro sobie przepakuję, także nie ma już... To chodziło o to, że jakby Marcin Barski tego nie zrobił mi to na dzisiaj, a w drukarni była, bo obsuwa, to w tym momencie już muszę pędzić do jakiejś innej drukarni, rozumiesz? A ja mam z nimi deal cenowy również. To o to chodzi. Jak mam większą nakład, tak, sprawdziłem, bo ostatnio ich sprawdzałem. 2,20 mam przy 50 sztukach netto. Tam jest 4 zł za sztukę od podstaw, a potem... no czekaj, bo nie ma jednej śrubki. So
a jak się nazywa?
One is missing.
Jak się nazywa ta?
Maybe it's there. Oh.
Jak się nazywa drukarnia?
Kolory.
W kolorach? Przecież to jest mega droga drukarnia. To masz
Ale ja mam deal.
Ale
ja mam deal. So,
Ale z BZZ wydaje mi się, że też można mieć deal, bo...
No to musiałbym z nimi zacząć porozmawiać. Oni są dobrzy, bo na poczekaniu w zasadzie niektóre robią rzeczy, jak się da z nimi dogadać. Ale ja mam, ale masz zły papier w tym?
W kolorach, wiesz, no...
Ale mówię o okładkach na płycie Audiomat. Już zaczynasz swoją jazdę.
Nie, no masz dobrą okładkę.
Wszystko jest tak samo ważne. It was not dropped. You had a I forgot the power supply yesterday. I was getting back here before 10 just to grab it. No zapomniałem zasilacz, wiesz, już prawie dojeżdżałem do domu, jak sobie przypomniałem, że nie naprawię tego miksera, jak nie będę miał zasilacza.
Dobrze, to widzimy się o 17.
Tak jest. No wiesz, to chodzi o to, że wszystkie takie rzeczy trzeba tam omówić z nimi. Ja drukowałem PZD, na Karmelickiej głównie w tym oddziale, bo jest najbliżej centrum. Mają też jeden w Podwórzu. Pod tym względem są dobrzy, są w kilku punktach w Krakowie. Jak ci się bardzo spieszy, to odwiedzasz inny punkt. No. Ale z kolorami ja mam, wiesz, znaczy do niej też się wysyła PDF-a i tyle.
I jeszcze ci na płytkę nagrywają, jak chcesz.
Aha. No kolory tak samo. Nie, w kolorach jest fajna młodzież, taka wiesz, taka zapasjonowana Audiomata. Tak bym powiedział. Czytają za każdym razem, co za płyta, wiesz, można tego posłuchać. Rozumiem. To jest też fajne. BZC mają przemiał tak zwany, ale są bardzo sprawni, więc pod tym względem są bardzo...
Jak ci coś źle zrobią, to robią jeszcze raz.
No tak, tak, no spoko, wiadomo. Mhm.
Okay, see you guys at 5. Thank you for the lecture. Sorry I was
See you.
late, but I should be over.
That's good because our PhD program is also, intensive, and after working on many different projects, he got trouble last year. I have to guarantee his program because he was not really attending classes. He was rejected several years ago, then he was always really advanced, so then we have to work a little bit on him to make it working, because he's much more, he's like a freelancer, as you see. Sometimes getting good job and then it's okay. Sometimes it's really in trouble with the money. I have several guys which I'm supporting them in a way to give them some money when they need really much, and then we are working to give it back on other projects. That's the best idea. The only problem which appeared now was that I shouldn't talk about, because we found a good solution, but I was a little bit stuck, just like waiting for the things which we managed to be ready, in advance. Even last night I was listed the whole description, which in fact it was a lot of information.
Oh.
How we start from. So then when we are coming without anything, and we are just starting from the update of the Windows or just or trying to get the device connected, that was a little bit surprised, because Arthur was using this this Mindwave many times. So then he got this update of the Windows, then he lost something. That's how it, where I think that we are unnecessary waiting a little bit, maybe I was waiting more than you. But that's what happened, and I feel a little bit guilty of the way, because when we met I just show you something which I have ready, okay, and then waiting for the others to build it up something, and I was sure that how Arthur came on Sunday with tons of visuals, on the last moment joining the screen and running. So this is Arthur.
Oh, yeah.
With tons of material. So why he is just showing just one, I didn't know. I don't know. And in fact the first one was from my previous project.
Oh.
So I said, no, Arthur, we can't do it, because we cannot show the material which was already published in many places.
Yeah. Also, I think he can use, I think we should try to integrate.
But that was I'm dealing with this like a test. We are testing the instrument. We are building up and testing.
I think we should try to integrate more material from.
I asked Piotr for processing, because we're talking about processing acoustic drums on the first day. So he should bring it something. I have also things ready, but Chris, I decided to get my two guys to divide the setting for 3 parts. Then I'm more concentrate on the biofeedback brainwaves and all those streams, not doing video and space arrangement at the same time, because there is a little bit opposite. When we are dealing during the solo performance, you are dealing with all those things. So that's my dream, always to either have ready-made stuff and settings which are working after one click, and then video, all those things are working, and then you are concentrating on one element. So music -1, the
Yeah.
mode by Max
Right.
Matthews.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I think for the video, I think some of the backgrounds we want to not use. I think all of these geometrical things which only do one thing, they just do this.
He's my very close friend, and I like him. But then we start to argue, you know, which is no way to do it during our residency.
They're asking him to use more stage material as background.
That was my
He could
first.
put a camera
Yes.
here. he could put a
Kinect
camera here,
is this for.
and so he has his brain, but behind the brain you have.
Believe me or not, yesterday he erased it. He put 2 tables. One is Marek, 2 is Chris.
Yeah.
And then he's starting to show me that my archive doesn't work because I want to be closer to the screen. And the people are outside. I said, what? And in fact, there's no Chris table. Chris is with many instruments. So that is a little bit a problem with him now.
I think we can suggest.
But we will find out. Don't worry. I managed yesterday with him. We make another residency here. And we clean it up, everything. There was a little bit out of my expectation and my schedule. The way that I let you come one day later, for my opinion, was just that you are better arranged, because I found out that you are still busy with other things. So that was the just extra day. And then after, if I would come just in time, I said, you have a fever, high temperature, then I will be more. So then we start to talk like a kindergarten, and I don't like it, you know. I don't like really to spend time on arguing. Huh?
Yeah. What's that? Okay.
Great.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Oh, let me give you 120 euros on that.
Oh, for the first repair. You can do it like this,
Yeah,
yes, with the
120.
polish.
Zlotys.
Perfect. Bingo. Thanks a lot.
Maybe I'll send the other one that's up there. When I got home.
Yes. Why not? To the same guy,
He seems to
I
know
think.
what he's doing.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Okay, oh, I know. French is not the priority. My computer down.
This is the laser.
Uh-huh. And I will, after my experience yesterday, when I want to leave something on this room and the guy said that cannot take anything, I said you should have the indication from our administration that you will get it tomorrow, a suitcase. And then he said, I don't know anything like that, so I'm going to visit them now, our main administrative director, just to be clear that it works. But did it change anything from your arrangement? Because I've got some extra letter from.
What has to happen
Yes.
is I wrap this up, I
Mhm.
put that on it, but then the shipping